We are back with another series of Deskside Diaries, and today I'm going to be talking about the business of blogging because, to be completely honest, I was blown away with everybody's questions, not only on YouTube, but you guys emailed me and you commented on the blog, and I think that you guys have such incredible questions, and I mean, I'm still constantly learning and growing, so I'm going to speak to my experience and how, you know, your questions have kind of how my experience through those have worked. So I really hope it's a help to you. I hope I get to all of your questions, and yeah. Okay, so the first question, when you started to blog full-time, how did you support yourself financially? All right, so this kind of speaks to a larger belief that I have. You know, when I started blogging, I had a professional career already. So I worked for 6 years in fashion PR, and so, you know, I was taught from a very young age when I started working that I needed to save 10% of my paycheck always into savings. So I always had a cushion for myself. I wasn't, you know, born into a rich family. It wasn't anything like that. It was, I learned to save from a young age, and I knocked down the door of my favorite retailer when I was 15. And I begged him for a job dressing the mannequins in the windows in the town that I grew up in Palo Alto. And I remember he was like, okay, you can dress the mannequins if you get a worker's permit. So I was 15. So from the time I was 15 to 25, I was saving 10% of my paycheck. And so that financially, when I gave myself 6 months to start my blog, that cushion was what I lived off of. And I think it's really important to have kind of a little cushion of money regardless of what you're doing. You never know when you're gonna find yourself in a rut, and having that, you know, it's always just comforting. It allows you to kind of live your life a little bit more freely. So that's kind of how I got started financially. The next question, what did it look like during those first few months when you reached out to companies? So again, I can't speak enough to having work experience before you start blogging. I think that if you're blogging and also doing a side job, that's great. When you're blogging, you're by yourself. You know, you're not in an office with other people, you're not communicating, you're not talking about ideas, you're not learning how to formally craft emails. When you don't have that professional experience, it might hinder some people in a way. You know, if you're fresh out of high school and you don't want to go to college and you just want to start blogging, sure, it's worked for a lot of people. But again, I said that I was going to be speaking to my experience today, and I think that part of the reason why I was able to go from the point that I did to where I am right now is because I kind of had those relationships in the beginning with the designers, with my friends who I've worked with for years in PR. So it was that kind of gave me my work experience, elevated me to a place that was easier for me to kind of make something of it instead of really starting from ground zero of not knowing anybody, not having any work experience. So really, I can't stress work experience enough. You know, if you're fresh out of college or fresh out of high school and you want to start blogging, go for it. But get a job at a favorite clothing store. Go to Anthropologie, or if you like beauty, work at Sephora, just to kind of get any kind of work experience. I think it's really important. So the next question is, how many followers on Instagram did you have at the time that I started, and what was my blog traffic like? So my personal Instagram, I had about 10,000 followers when I decided to make my old Instagram. Was called Jenny's Photo Booth, and it was my personal Instagram, and I would just post fun things on it. And then when I hit around 10,000, I had also started blogging full time, and I was around 3,000 page views a month, maybe 2,500. So, you know, I think that when I went full time, I think 10,000 is kind of a golden number. 10,000 unique visitors a month and up is something that's gonna get recognition from any kind of designer or brand, because that's kind of the base of where you want to be. And for Instagram, I think so many things have changed in the world of Instagram now with the new algorithm that I don't know if my experience will be of any value to you. But I think that, with having a really clean aesthetic, having really high imagery, high content, or having really high quality imagery is super, super important. Making sure that all of your images are cohesive. Instead of numbers, I think that brands are really looking for people who have high engagement with likes and comments. I think that for a while there was a big big conversation about maybe boosting followers and boosting likes and boosting comments. And finally, brands are kind of like savvying up to that, and they're seeing that it's not a numbers game, but rather like a quality of content game, which, another question was, do you think it's too late for, bloggers now to get involved in the game? And I don't think so at all. I mean, to be honest, my original gut feeling was, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I would start right now. But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, no, that's not accurate, because there are a few girls who I met just last year who had, very small followings, like 15 to 20,000 followers, and they've gone now to 500,000. So absolutely not. I think that if your aesthetic is great, you have a very clear brand vision, and you execute, your brand vision across all of your social media platforms, including your blog, then there's no reason why you shouldn't start now. So last month I got a question that was about something that I said. It was, what do you mean you showed companies what you can do? So in the beginning, obviously, you're creative. So what are you doing? You're styling outfits, you're creating beauty looks, you're photographing them, and then you're presenting them on your blog or on your Instagram and creating a story. So think of it as like an editor creating a story in Vogue. So you call in the samples and you style the outfit, and all of these things, if they create a really cohesive concept and story, then a brand is gonna be like, oh wow, that was amazing. I really like what she did, with just that dress that she put together. She created a really solid story with it, and photographed it really beautifully. And you have to keep in mind like what the brand's aesthetic is. So for example, we just did a campaign with Dior perfume, and obviously like I went and I just poured through pages of like Dior ads, and I know that the lighting on their photos is always very light and airy, and the pinks are very high and the contrast is very low. And I looked at like the makeup of how the girls were wearing the makeup in the photos. So I always try and emulate maybe like what a brand's already doing to stay in line with their aesthetic. Obviously, if they're approaching me about doing something, then there's already a similarity in our aesthetics. But what I like to do is really cater to what it is that they naturally have going for their brand. So when I say, what does it mean that I showed companies how to do? Show companies what you can do in terms of like what amazing content you can create. Okay, the next question is, where did you make most of your money in the beginning? So this goes back into traffic, and I think once you've hit a decent amount of traffic on your website, you can then start applying to affiliate networks. We're all familiar with affiliate networks, Shop Style, Reward Style, there's a bunch of others. And to be a part of those networks, you need to have a certain amount of traffic on your website. Now, when I first started out, my revenue was being generated off of the items that I was suggesting on my blog. So if you're not familiar with affiliates and how affiliate links work, definitely do a bit of research on that if you wanted to get into the blog sphere. Okay, so next question is, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when starting your blogging business full-time? And I think that this is just like a general overall challenge in anything that anybody does. But for me, it was confidence and believing in myself and being like, I just quit my job that I've had for 6 years, and now I'm doing something that like nobody has even like done anything with. It was like a hobby. So convincing my parents that it was a good idea, I think they looked at me like I was crazy, but thank God I have supportive parents who we're like, okay, if you have a cushion saved, go for it, but don't rely on us to help you with anything. So I think one of the biggest challenges I faced was definitely keeping my confidence up and really focusing purely on what it is that I wanted to do as a brand, not as an individual. Because to create a really successful blog, essentially you need to create a brand, and you need to look at everything as you do, as hard as it is. You need to remove yourself personally from your decisions and say, okay, is this designer on brand for me? Are these colors that I'm using in my newsletter on brand? Does this wording sound right? Does it sound what I would say from my Snapchat to my Instagram to my Facebook? Are these all things that kind of like flow? So branding is really important. So I think, just going back to the challenges, it's making sure that you are really sticking to what it is that you want to do and not getting distracted by what other people are doing, and really remaining confident about what it is that you're doing, no matter what, in anything that you do. So the next question we have is, how do you feel about combining different topics on your blog, Instagram, YouTube channel? Do you feel like you can actually combine 2 different topics, or would you like to stick to one subject? So this is great because I've never really thought about this, but naturally I've gone in that direction. So Margo Me started out really heavily rooted in fashion, and I was really just writing about all these different trends that I was seeing and different things that I liked, sales. I think as my following grew, there was a lot more questions that I got. Just as I'm, which is exactly why I'm doing this series right now. So things naturally grow and evolve. And if you are a lifestyle brand, a lifestyle blogger, that's gonna be just organic. So I think as long as you're organically flowing through different verticals, it makes sense. But if you're forcing something, like, if you're an illustrator and then you're doing makeup tutorials, maybe you're illustrating about makeup, so makeup tutorials would make sense. But as long as everything kind of like flows and is a cohesive story and feels organic, I don't see anything being wrong with that. Okay, so this is a question that I really like. How do you elevate your blog from beginner to being a little more established? So this part, at this point in the video, I'm gonna segue a bit into like photography, because I think one of the things that's gonna make your blog really stand out from the crowd, which I think a lot of people are really keyed into already, is photography. Making sure that your imagery is super high quality. Everything should be really crisp and sharp. You should have unique angles on the camera, so not necessarily just like a front focus. Get somebody who's gonna be like creative behind the camera to really like spark your interest. When you're scrolling through Instagram, you just see like a straight on outfit shot. Okay, it might be cool if the outfit's awesome, but if the outfit isn't like insane, you're just gonna kind of like scroll past it. So constantly try and like challenge yourself, especially if you're putting it on your blog as well. And then that leads into, is Freddie, my husband, a trained photographer, or was it something in my partnership through the blog that made for practice makes perfect? So Freddie is a film director and writer and producer, and so he naturally is inclined to seeing kind of like the creative side of things. And he had a camera. This was like, he's been working in film for 10 years. And so he had a bunch of equipment lying around. And I was like, well, if you have that gorgeous camera laying around, why don't we like go out and like shoot an outfit photo? So it both kind of, like, to answer the question, both kind of came together. And he definitely trained himself more after he realized that there was some potential with what we were doing. After that, we kind of invested in a better lens. My favorite lenses to shoot with are the 85 and the 50. Both, one is like closer up, one is farther away, but I think the 50 is a very popular street style lens, if you're wondering, and we shoot on a Canon. Let's see. Do you shoot with different photographers than Freddie? Yes, I do. So like I said, Freddie works as well. So when we're not shooting together, I work with a few different photographers and videographers. Tim's behind the camera. And so I think that Freddie, my very strong belief is that people really excel in certain things, and you never want to like make somebody do something that they don't like doing. And Freddie loves shooting street style. He loves shooting vacation. But when it comes to like beauty, I think working with a female is a bit easier. It's like we've shot so many beauty campaigns together and they turn out beautifully, but there's something almost like romantic and like light and airy about a feminine photographer shooting, maybe like a beauty tutorial or something like that. So I work with 2 different photographers. They're amazing. I adore them, and you have to check them out. Jana Williams, we collaborate on some amazing projects together, more conceptual projects. And then Jessica Alexander, she's amazing too, and we do a lot of portrait photography together. Okay, so the next question is, when Freddie takes your photos, who edits them? Freddie does. When it's for the blog, he loves editing. I think that's where he really his creativity comes out, is in the edit. So I absolutely let him take the lead on that, and I'll respond to my emails while he does it. But I think sometimes we'll shoot Instagram content, and I love to edit my own Instagram, because I think Instagram definitely looks a bit different sometimes than the blog does. So if my Instagram is taking a really deep kind of contrasty theme, and we're publishing photos on the blog that don't feel like that, then I'll take the lead on editing those. But it's all it's like a creative collaboration. Okay, let's see what else. Do you use a special program to resize your images on your blog without losing quality? Or when you upload them, are they already resized? Okay, so this is a big one, and this is something that I actually learned from a photographer years ago. Okay, so you have your raw file. Now you never, ever, ever wanna edit a JPEG. You wanna edit a raw file in Lightroom. And that is where we do all of our editing. Once we're done editing the photo, we save it as a JPEG. And then I put it into Photoshop and resize it for the size specifications that fit my blog specifically. Everybody's gonna have a different width or height on their blog, so just make sure that you know exactly what size they're gonna be. And then from there, you wanna upload them as the highest quality so that they're not blurry. But you know who's a really good one for this is Jana Williams. She has a ton of photography tips and tricks on her blog. She's the pro, not me, so head over there. Jana, I love you. Let's see. Have you always liked to write, or is that something that came to you when you first started your blog? I have always been a writer. Always, always, always. I actually thought that I was going to go to school for journalism. I've always kept a diary. I know that sounds cheesy, but I think of my blog as kind of like my virtual diary in a sense. It's just kind of matured to another level. But no, I've always loved writing. But if you haven't noticed, I'm not the strongest writer when it comes to grammar. So it's really important if you do want to start writing seriously to invest in some software. Like I use Grammarly, which is great for like spelling and grammar, like just catching mistakes that because when I read something, I read it as if I'm saying it and I literally do not catch what I'm writing. Like I could look at something 15 times and it would say there instead of there. And I would be like, okay, I spelled that wrong. So, and I'm always getting calls in the morning like from my mom and my closest girlfriends. They're like, Jenny, oh my God, you spelled this wrong. Or like people will text me, but they'll be like, oh my God, you spelled this wrong. It's so bad, but hey, I'm human and so is everybody else. So, just go with it and find things that, if you have weaknesses, don't be ashamed of them and just like embrace them and figure them out as you go. Okay, so this is a fun one. How do you develop good, solid relationships with brands? Did you send an email to introduce yourself? And from there, continue to build a relationship. So absolutely. I think at the beginning, if any brand gives you the time of day, it's all about the craft of an email and you want to make sure that you're always coming off like super sweet, nothing with like 100 exclamation points, nothing with like 100 smiley faces. You want to present yourself as being a professional. And I think, people take that very seriously. And after, maybe I got in the door somewhere new, I would always send like a handwritten thank you note. If they did something really big, like I would, send them flowers. I think anything that's gonna set you apart is something that's thoughtful. So if you don't necessarily know the person personally, something like a handwritten note, like, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to work for you. It's just like in any other job. If you take an interview with somebody, you're gonna write them a follow-up email. If the same thing goes for this side of the blogging business. It's all about how you treat people and it's all about relationships, and you never, ever, ever wanna burn any bridges because the fashion industry is infinitely smaller than you can imagine, which is why it's so important to just always be super friendly. And if you have a problem, address it constructively instead of getting on the defense and the attack about things. Okay, this is a really good one. I love this one. Do you have an editorial calendar? If so, how far in advance do you plan your posts? Okay, so for example, you're viewing this probably like late October, early November, and right now it's August 29th. So we have our YouTube content planned 3 months out, and that's not the same for our blog content. So our blog content, I have an Excel calendar, I have the dates 3 months out, and what I'll do is I'll just kind of plug in different ideas. So I'll be reading a magazine at an airport and it'll be talking about how frills are back for fall. And oh, I really like that subject. I want to write about that. So I'll just kind of put a note in there and I'll be like, okay, this is a fun thing to write about. So that way when I have images and I'm like, oh, I wore that ruffly skirt, I'm gonna post it to the blog. So then I'll go grab this subject. So then I have something to write about. So it all kind of flows together and it doesn't feel super disjointed. So to say that I have a concrete calendar, I'm posting this photo this day, this day, this day, no, it doesn't happen that way. It happens more organically, but we always do have something slated. So we have a calendar, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, blog post, no matter what. Wednesday is our newsletter. If you haven't signed up, please go do it. The link is in my About section. And also subscribe while I'm at it. Subscribe. I'm like, where's subscribe? And then every Thursday is YouTube. So we have days because I think regular programming across the board, and it took me 2 years to get to my regular programming, and still, as you know, I slip up every now and then, and I won't post something exactly on that day. I might post it on Tuesday instead. But it's important to kind of get yourself into a routine, just like anything else in life. Get yourself into a routine, try and stick to it. I think that's how you're gonna build a really loyal following, is because that's when they start to tune in for it. I've heard horror stories about people having like really solid foundations on YouTube, and then the second they fall off, it's like so hard to get people back. So that's why I've been trying to like stay up on it. How am I doing? So the next question is, do you get designers to lend you clothes or do they give them to you? So it's a really big mix of both. I think that gifting is amazing, and if people have the budget to gift, you know, I think a lot of people are open to that depending on what it is. You know, for the most part, if I wear something on the blog, I'll wear it again for my personal life, but I won't wear it again to take photos of, because I constantly want to be showing you guys new, fresh clothes to wear. I don't want to be wearing the same dress over and over again. Like if you go back and look at Instagram, I've worn this dress like 3 times now. But I'll wear it here. Oh, and by the way, it's by Wayf. I know you're gonna ask. So it's by Wayf, W-A-Y-F. And I think it's like under 100 or like under 120, so you're gonna love it. So, you know, I'll like keep things in rotation. I have my racks around me. But for the most part, you know, they go back. They're loans. This is, you know, a personal piece that I purchased. But for the most part, for me personally, I really like to borrow clothes from designers because they get more use out of it, I get more use out of it, and it just like, it's quicker turnover. So that's kind of like my stance on that. Okay, so how many people work with you? When I see you on Snapchat, there always seem to be a number of people around you. Well, I am surrounded by the best. I seriously think I count my blessings every day that I have such a solid team around me. It first started out with, well, obviously Freddie and I were like the OG team. And then we brought in our manager, and she is absolutely incredible. And what she does is she kind of like fields things for us. So when I was managing myself, I was doing things like, you know, you chase after your own money, and you have to, you know, constantly like reach out to brands who might not be interested in working with you. And so when you're with an agency, it's a bit easier to get consistent work. Okay, so we signed with our agency about 2 years into when we started blogging. So I have an amazing manager who's, you know, just constantly thinking of new and amazing fun projects for us to work on. And then I have my incredible assistant on the ground here, Lainey, who helps me like day to day. So she's based here in LA with me. My agent's in New York. So Lainey's on the ground here with me every day, and we do everything from like, she started out as basically just like, you know, creative role, and now she like helps with all my editorial content and like plugging in blog stuff, and so she is here kind of, you know, like helping me with the day to day. And I think it's really important when you get to a point when you're like, I need help, to ask for it, because otherwise you start to kind of like, you get a bit lackluster because you're so focused on trying to put your energy into one thing that having somebody to kind of help is very, very important. So when you get to that point, like, don't hesitate. It's very hard to find somebody. Like I said, I count my lucky stars. And then I have Tim behind the camera, who's also amazing and gets my creative vision for any video. Like, I will literally send her the script and the idea, and she'll be like, okay, this is what we're doing today. Boom, 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 boom. And I love it. So it's like, you know, it's just really great to have kind of that like creative energy. It's very kinetic and it's contagious, and we're like dancing and laughing behind the scenes, and we like to have fun with what we do, you know? We're not curing cancer here, we're having fun, which is what I always like to say. Okay, so I'll just do a few more questions, some fun ones. What was the very first pinch me moment? So I hadn't even started blogging full time, and I picked up an outfit, one of those like top and bottom like matching sets for Coachella from the store LF. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's, you know, very trend driven. It was like this bright blue like kaleidoscope print piece, and I wore it to a few parties before Coachella, like at the festival, but like before. and it was picked up in like Harper's Bazaar and Vogue, and it just kind of like ran online. And then a friend of mine who worked at Tory Burch emailed me, and she was like, it was a picture of Harper's Bazaar Korea print, and she was like, oh my God, look, you're front and center. It was like a feature inside the magazine, and there were like, it was one large photo and then like 4 photos around, and it was like me in the center and then like Katy Perry down here, and I was like, this makes no sense at all. But it was like, it was one of those moments where I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And again, like you gotta let yourself get excited about those. It's not boasting, it's not, bragging, it's like getting excited for something that's like actually really cool. So that was definitely a pinch me moment, and I had it hanging up on my wall for a while, but then I was like, okay, I'm gonna move on to something else. Wallpaper. Let's see. Okay, I feel like I answered a lot of questions. Maybe we'll end with this one. I would love to know how you manage to engage your public with your Insta besides the great outfits and photos. Any tips? Okay, so this is something I'm constantly challenging myself to do also. I'm not on Snapchat all the time. I'm not Instagramming 5 times a day. I'm not, on Periscope and Kaleidoscope, whatever the hell everybody's on. I just kind of do me. And you have to do you. Do what makes sense. Do what feels right. Some days I don't feel like getting on Snapchat because I've got an inbox full of things due, and like I've got deadlines, and I've got dentist appointments, and like I know maybe you guys want to see that, but like I just don't think that I have time to be like, hi, okay, I'm going to the dentist, and like doing all these things. So take time for you and do what you want to do, and then that will give you kind of like a recharge moment to then like funnel that creativity into something unique that's going to make you stand out from the rest of the crowd. And then obviously, just things like creating really gorgeous, beautiful content. If you see something that you like on Instagram and you take it as a screenshot for inspiration, use it as inspiration. Don't use it as copying. If somebody has something laid out a certain way, we're all guilty of, not guilty, but everybody's inspired by something. So it's really challenging yourself to be inspired by something, but then how are you going to take it to the next level? It's so easy to just copy, but and I think that's really what our industry is kind of like maybe getting a little bit stale right now, where people are kind of just like, it's just one thing after the other of like outfit pose, flat lay, okay, what's next? I want to see what's next. And to be honest with you, I don't really know what's next, but I think that video is definitely a big thing. I think if you're not doing video yet, get into it. That's what I've been told, which is why I'm here. So I guess I'll leave you with that. I really hope that today was helpful and I hope I answered a lot of your questions. I know that there were a lot, and I tried to get to, most of them. There were so many. But next month, I think I'm gonna try and convince him. I know everybody wants a Q&A with Freddie, and I really want him to do one too. So while we're off, traveling for a bit, I'm gonna try and convince him to get, less camera shy, so that he can get in front of the camera and we can do like a couples Q&A. So if you have questions, let me know in the comments below. You guys did such a good job for the business of blogging. So let me know what you guys want to hear about me and Freddie. See you soon.